Hello, and welcome to Mindset Shifts and the What Ifs weekly show where we talk about different topics every week and we explore. Usually, I spin the wheel with you. This week, I decided to switch it up a little bit and pre-tell you the topic in case you were interested in the actual topic and what we're going to be talking about. And so, therefore, I already did the wheel. And the topic tonight is my story, which I haven't talked about in a while. So it's kind of nice that came up. If you are joining me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, welcome and let me know in the chat that you're here. If you're joining me on Instagram, also let me know that you're here. I'm on a little bit of a different platform. And so I'm not looking directly at you on Instagram all the time, which makes me feel a little bit weird, but here we are. If you don't know me, I am Lauren Lefkowitz. I'm an executive coach for workaholic women executives and people-pleasing women executives. And yes, I work with men too, but I more frequently work with women. And so that's who I mostly market to. But sometimes men and non-binary folks identify with my work. And I welcome everybody who is a kind person. So here we are. So I'm going to tell you my story tonight, which is kind of fun. And there are some parts that are a little jarring and surprising. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the scope of like how I got here, where I am today, which is being a business owner, why that was for me, and that's maybe not for somebody else. But let me start from the start. So I grew up in New York, suburban New York, and came to Maryland, where I live now, for the University of Maryland. And I stayed, and I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I got a job, which was a administrative assistant in a meeting planning department at a nonprofit. It was a nonprofit for plastics, so not a very exciting topic, unless you're super into plastics, in which case, congrats. Oh, hey, Jessica, I'm so glad to see you here. Welcome. Long time since I made one of these, but it's refreshing to see and hear your inspiring self again. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. I'm always glad when you join. So I started in this meeting planning assistant position and did that for a year, which I think is pretty typical of a first job, to sort of stay there a year while you're figuring out what you want. But I still didn't know what I wanted. And so I moved to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where I started in an entry-level accounting position, which makes me laugh. I later accidentally managed a finance team, and I can barely count all 10 of the fingers on my hands. So, careers veer, right? So I took on this accounting position in very simple accounting and also doing car registrations and transfers of registrations. And so again, I liked the company. I liked the people I was working with as I did the first job. But I wasn't really into the job itself. So I got tapped on the shoulder to move into a sales position, which I didn't necessarily want, but I didn't really know what it entailed, and I didn't really know what I wanted to be. So I took it, and I was awful, like really bad at it. And so I decided 6 months in, when I was utterly failing at it, that I was just going to give it my all. And I was used to being decent at stuff and figuring things out. And I couldn't get a hold of this, and it really bugged me. And so I was trying really hard, and I got tapped on the shoulder again, this time by the general manager of the DC area, to look at a job in HR. And I immediately said no, because I felt I needed to stick out this job for a year or two, that I needed to become successful at it, and that I needed to prove myself before I would allow myself to move on to something else, which is lesson number one, don't stay in a job that you're not suited for. Don't stay in a career that you're not suited for. If it is not for you, let go, move to something else, especially when somebody has a vision for you, the way that this general manager did. And Ed McCarty, if you're out there, thank you for changing my life and bringing me into the world of HR that I stayed in for 20 years. So I moved into HR. I changed my mind. I took the interview, I got the job, and I moved into HR, and I fell in love. I loved the people aspect of it. I loved audit. I loved benefits administration. I loved training new hires. Like, there was nothing I didn't like about this job, except that I was scared I was going to mess it up. So I worked really, really hard, harder than I needed to. And because I hadn't succeeded in the previous job, I felt like extra, like I had to succeed in this job. Within a short period of time, I was promoted from an HR coordinator position, working with our smallest population of employees, to an HR supervisor position within a new regional office where we were combining rental car branches from different offices into a new region. So I had cultural alignment to work with. I had welcoming new employees. I had employees who were being moved around to branches that they didn't know, in areas they didn't know, because their region had been a different geographic area before. So there was a lot of training. There was a lot of acclimating. I was working with new coworkers, and I got really excited about it, and I started working all the time. And by all the time, I mean like 50, 60 hours a week, which doesn't seem like that much in the scheme of my career, because it gets to be more later. So loving this job, loving what I get to do, loving that I get to be in leadership, suddenly becoming a mentor to any new HR person who came into the DC area, which there were 4 or 5 other people like me at my general level. There were entry level people. I was sent people to train. I was sent people to mentor, and that was super flattering. And in addition, I had this full-time job, and we had an expectation when I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car that even if you didn't work in the rental branches, you were expected to show up at least one Saturday a month. And I, as an overachiever, wanted to show up more than that. So I showed up generally 3 times a month on a Saturday, sometimes all 4. And I patted myself on the back for doing something nobody was asking me to do. Did so well in that job that I got promoted to an office where another HR person had not been succeeding. So I got sent there to sort of clean up, in part to clean up, and in part because my manager and I clashed for a lot of reasons. And they sent me over to this new region with the opportunity to work with this new director who was going to be amazing to work with, and who I was going to flourish under and get promoted under. And he was fired 4 days later. And then I was told the truth, which was, we can count on you, Lauren. And we knew you could hold down the fort until a new regional director came in, or regional vice president came in to take over. And we knew you could get him acclimated. So I took that as flattery. It was actually kind of a mean trick, but I took that as flattery initially. And then I was working like 60, 65 hours a week because there was a lot to keep up with and a lot to clean up. And then the new guy came in, and I felt like I was starting all over. And I'd been waiting for this promotion for a while that I wasn't getting from the former manager because he explicitly did not like me. And I just decided, like, I don't want this anymore. I deserve better. It was one of the few times in my career, in my corporate career, where I realized that I deserve better. And so I moved to another company, joined an investment firm that I loved. I had such a good time there. And I dove even deeper into the work. So I went from, 60, 65 hours a week, where I was sick, by the way. I got sick while I was working at Enterprise. I had a grand mal seizure that came out of nowhere, which led to a bunch of autoimmune issues with my body deciding to attack itself as a defense on this one-time seizure that I had. So here I am, not feeling well. I moved to a new company with new management, new people, amazing people, and started working 60, 70 hours a week on a regular basis. Again, felt like I had to prove myself, felt like everybody was counting on me, raised my hand chronically for everything. I wanted to be involved in everything. I wanted to be everybody's go-to person. Super flattered when I was, super excited when I got invited to join working groups and teams, when I got invited by the parent company to participate in projects, to be a trainer from the parent company perspective, to lead a project at one point. And I didn't want to let anybody down. And I didn't want anybody to know I was sick in particular. And so I worked even harder because I didn't want anybody to think I was lazy or too weak to perform. So I made myself sicker by working harder. After 9 years at this company, there were rumors of layoffs, which did end up coming true. And I did not want to be in the layoffs. As a person who is the sole breadwinner in my home, where my dog and I live, and she doesn't bring in any money, I knew that I needed to protect myself. So I looked for a new job. Got an amazing opportunity to launch an HR department for the first time in the 25-year history of a nonprofit. And like, what a cool opportunity. The CEO legitimately said to me, I don't know what you're supposed to do, but I think you know what you're supposed to do. So come on in and do what you like. Well, creating an HR department takes a lot of time and energy. So I went from working 70 hours a week to 80 to 100 hours a week. And in my mind, I was going to do that for a year while I got like everything set up and smoothed out. But a 25-year-old organization does not only take a year to fix. And in fact, I stayed there for 6 years, was not fixed when I left. Was better. It was definitely improved in a lot of areas. But, a 25-year-old organization that's had dysfunction takes a long time to turn around. So now I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week. And I fall out of love with the job, with HR, with working all of the time. But I've been doing that for more than 15 years. And so I continued to do it because it was all I knew. It was what I assumed was expected of me. And again, I didn't want to be in a position where I was seen as weak or sick or tired or lazy. These are the words that ran through my head every time I thought about taking time. So after a few years of being at this nonprofit, I started looking for another job. And every HR job I looked at felt like it looked the same as what I was already doing or had already done. And I had this warped sense of how things were, that it couldn't be better somewhere else, that I had like the time in credibility from this company, and that I may as well stay here if I'm going to stay in HR. And I saw this long road to retirement, being in my early 40s at the time, that like, I guess I'll just be happy when I retire, which is a horrible feeling. It is also the feeling that most of my clients come in with, which is that they've been in a career for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and they think it's too late to do something else. So I and my clients are evidence that that's not true, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. So I'm working like crazy. I interview for this position that's a vice president of a bank, a real estate investment trust. But it had this sort of old-timey banking feel where like everybody was in suits. The president, it was privately owned. The president was called Mr. Whatever, instead of by his first name, including by the senior vice president who was interviewing me, referred to him as Mr. Whatever. And that was a little off-putting to me because I'd always been on a first name basis. And I thought that it was like only in Hallmark movies that people called their bosses Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. whatever. So that was really weird. And the plan for that position was that I would come in, be a vice president for like 7 to 9 years, and then take over when the senior vice president retired. And I just wasn't willing to wait for that. And I was I didn't want to do the same job, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. In the meantime, I'd been coaching and consulting on the side for like years and years. And that had just sort of happened organically. Did not occur to me to pull those two things together and actually make a career of coaching at the time. So here I am, I'm sitting in my condo and I'm promising myself that something's going to change. And now it's the like winter time of 2018, 2019. I have just taken off a bunch of days, which is the first time I'd taken off in years, like really been off, because our office closed during the holiday break from Christmas to New Year's. And I always like caught up on work during that week. But that year I decided not going to catch up on work. I'm going to do home stuff. Cleaned out my apartment, just like top to bottom, baseboards wiped, things donated, thrown out, ordered in color, right? And everything is like basically as perfect as you can make a home. And I decided that once I'd made my home perfect, I would then perfect my life. That's not how things work, by the way. So, and I learned that very quickly. So if you have not heard this part of the story, this is where things get shocking. And one day in early January of 2019, I'm sitting in my apartment. It's a snow day, so we're working from home. We closed the physical office, but everybody has laptops, so we're working from home. And I'm running my Roomba vacuum, and I see that the Roomba is headed towards a glass lamp that's waiting by the door on a table to be donated. And this lamp's cord is hanging down, and I see it heading for the cord, and I think, oh no, that's going to pull the lamp down. It's going to shatter all over the wood floor. I have a dog. Her paws are going to get cut up. There's going to be glass everywhere. So I jump up, run across the room to catch it, transfer from carpet to wood floor, slide on my socks on the wood floor, launch forward, reach out for a table I'm not close enough to, and flat on my front. And I broke both of my shoulders. And there's a whole story that goes with that I won't go into in the interest of time tonight, but sometime I'll talk about my broken shoulders again. And it was a long recovery. It required me to live in rehab centers to have home health care when I finally came home. All in all, the recovery was about a year, but it was about 4 months before I went back to work part-time. And then I worked my way up after 5 months to full-time. And while I was out, when I had broken my shoulders, my friend's favorite joke was, oh, look who can't be a hand raiser anymore. So like a literal lesson from the universe. And what I realized during that time was that I wasn't enjoying my career. And because I worked so many hours, there was like no real life to enjoy. So here I am, I've fallen out of my career. I've fallen out of my life. And like a little bit of now what, right? And so I went back to work. And Jessica's got a comment here. I'll pull up. I've never understood how you could sacrifice all of your personal time to work for that many years. But the idea that you took your first PTO in a long time to deep clean your condo puts it into perspective. I'm so glad you take time off now. Yes, I do take real time off now. And I like do things that are not cleaning, which is, I also clean, but I do other things too. So I gave my life to work because I was good at it. And I did enjoy it for a long time. I liked being good at it. I liked being praised for it. I liked getting promotions and making more money. And I didn't know what else I was good at. So I just worked a lot. And then when I started resenting it, I thought I couldn't slow down because then people would know I was sick. And I had started sharing with people. The nonprofit I worked at dealt with a patient population for a disease. And so I felt I could share there, but I also felt like I had to be stronger than other people for no reason. That's what I felt like. So I go back to work with this like empty promise to myself because there were no goals or plans associated with it. And we all know that goal without a plan is a wish. And so I went back to work with this wish that I would work less, dove right back into 80+ hour work weeks. interim managed a couple of departments. And then when the pandemic started, I kind of broke. And my boss came in to ask me appropriately what we should do, because they were talking about the governor closing offices and businesses. And HR was the place to go to, but I was involved in so many other things that like I didn't have any more room in my brain. So my first thought when he asked what we should do was, I don't effing know. I don't have any more answers or ideas. Done. Empty. No more ideas. I eventually did come up with ideas. We met as an entire executive team and figured it out. And then I realized something had to change. And a series of events, including running into a former colleague, meeting a group of HR people who also were in burnout, and some of them had done something about it and some of them hadn't. And finding these opportunities and actually listening, right? I think we get presented with opportunities all the time, but we're not always ready to listen. And so that was my next lesson, was like, learn to listen to what is out there, what's possible, what's opportunity. And so I learned to listen. I hired my own coach. Finally, here I was, this high achiever, all of these years coaching other people, helping them find their versions of amazing lives with career satisfaction and more money and better boundaries and all of these things. And I thought if I couldn't figure out myself, that I was not figure outable. And so I just had to live this way, which is a very martyr sort of lifestyle. And I finally realized that the reason people came to me was because they couldn't figure out themselves. The people who came to me were also people who helped other people. And it finally sunk in with me that in order to get the help that I needed to reach out. And so I hired a coach for the first time. And she helped me change my life within 6 months. This is part of like the yada, yada, yada of the story. Within 6 months, I had gotten myself down to 40, 50-hour work weeks. I had let go of a bunch of work. I had gone to my boss and told him that I needed his help in boundary setting. He'd had no idea I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. He's the best boss I ever had. And he didn't know I was working that much. And he told me I wouldn't have allowed that if I knew. You made it look really easy. And I got all my boundaries together. And when my head was cleared of all of this noise, of the things I couldn't have and the ways I wasn't allowed to set boundaries and the lies I told myself about having boundaries would make me look weak and lazy and all of those things, all of the stories that we tell ourselves about the things we think are wrong with us, then I finally recognized with that all that space in my brain that what I wanted to do for a living was be a coach. And even then, I had like a 5-year plan to take my side gig of coaching into a real business. And it wasn't until I hired a business strategist that I then was able to set a 1-year goal, because by reaching out for more help, I was able to set a 1-year goal of opening my own business. And I actually did it in 6 months. I gave my notice after 3 months, worked for another 3. It's like my last act as a people pleaser to give a bunch of notice. And I also negotiated to have clients from that organization when I left. And so win-win. And entrepreneurship, I've been an entrepreneur for a little over 2 years. It's really fun and really hard and really exciting and really scary all the time, all at once. And I cannot imagine myself doing anything different. Now, most of my clients don't become entrepreneurs. Some do, but most of them don't, because a lot of us are made long-term for the corporate life, but not for the career or the job or the company that we're in. And we self-limit because we think we have all we can have. We think we are smart, creative people. And if we can't figure out our own stuff when we're so good at figuring out other people's stuff, I call it being part of the How Hard Can It Be Club, that we think we're not allowed to have stuff. And by hiring a coach, for me, when my clients hire me, you get to be looked at from an outsider's point of view. You get to be asked the questions that you are not capable or not willing to ask yourself. And you get to step out of your little box of what you think is possible and actually look at what your future can look like. So that's been my experience. If you're curious about what it looks like to work with a coach, reach out to me. I am super available. I am happy to have a strategy call. I'm very low pressure. And if you want to work with a coach and we have a conversation and we mesh well together and we talk about what it looks like to work together and you decide you want to do it, it's going to be your choice. It's not me pushing you into doing it. And if you ever talk to a coach who says like, it's now or never, you got to do it. What are you waiting for? What's wrong with you? Ugh, red flag. But that's what I'm going to leave you with tonight. I am super happy to have shared my story again. I haven't shared it in a while, and so happy to all of you who are here, who catch this on the replay. And really look forward to coming back next week with a new topic. Most of my topics are actually about being coached, about being an executive, about boundary setting and positivity and believing in yourself, confidence, imposter syndrome, things like that. So please come back next week, same time, same place, and I will see you then. Have a great night, everybody.